Hi, everybody. This is Larry Green with Mercury Leadership for another edition of my podcast. Today, we're just going to talk a little bit about vacation and the things that you do and learn and come home with from a vacation. I just got back from a few days of visiting friends in Minnesota. I've lived there twice in the last few decades, once in the 80s and once in the 90s, and had the start of my corporate career way back in the 80s, and that's where I was hired. Moved there from a different state and lived there for a few years. And so I've got friends, long time friends there from when I worked in my corporate career. And so I hadn't been back there for a long time. I actually visited two sets of friends, one from there, both of them from there, but one had also lived here in California that I've known for a long time as well. So I made some observations when I was on the trip about a lot of things. One is, of course, every time I take a break, which is a little too infrequent, that it's always good for me, good for the soul, good for everything to get away and reflect and think. And and I found that it's good for my creative mind in what I do in the coaching world and with strategic advisory and working with all the businesses that I work with. There needs to be some creativity in the work that I do. And I've noticed that I started having new ideas or ideas on how to do things differently or how I can help my clients in different ways. Also, some things that would just move my business forward a little bit as well on the creative side. And so I spent a fair amount of time just letting myself kind of wander and think about things and making a few notes here and there on while I was on the trip. And that feels kind of good to kind of let yourself run free a little bit, if you will. Uh, I visited, like I said, old friends. Another thing I observed was one of the friends I worked with as peers in my corporate career. And as that career evolved, I moved around the country and he stayed put in Minnesota for his entire life, as a matter of fact. And as time went on, we came back around and I ended up working for him as he had been promoted ahead of me, a year or two ahead of me. And so, as part of our just conversation, I ended up moving back to Minnesota from California to work for him, under him, I should say, reporting directly to him for a couple of years as a stepping stone to get into to be promoted into management in that company. And it was fun to go back and reminisce, of course, about some of the things that we had done together in the industry and the company that he still works for after all these years. And just kind of compare and contrast with my path and my journey, where I've been in my career, and and where he is and where he's been in his career. I also have known his family for a long time, so I know all of his wife and his kids as well. So it's just kind of fun, I guess, to let yourself do a little, like I said, comparing and contrasting, and to kind of see where I stand, where I want to go, and where I've been, if you will. And I guess I'm of the mindset of being a lifelong learner, and so I'm always looking for what to learn, where I can learn from any situation, and kind of be outside of it just a little bit while I'm, having those conversations. And like one thing I like to say is kind of have an app running in the background that's allowing myself to learn and kind of take notes and as I live in the moment at the same time. So that was a lot of fun, hanging out with them and just reminiscing, spending time, a little bit of talking about the old days, but also since I'm a student of business my whole life, quizzing him about where that industry's gone. I've been out of it for 25 years, but quizzing him about where that industry and that company has gone, because they were a very low tech industry. It was auto parts manufacturing. They're a very low tech industry, and to see how far they've come. And it's interesting to see um, that they've come a long way in some ways and almost not at all in others, the industry that is. And at the same time, the company has come a long way in some ways and not in others. But the one thing that really impressed me and really kind of proved what I already knew was this company that is now about 102, 103 years old, is still to this day all about taking care of their people. We have several occasions where some of our friends had retired, and upon their retirement, they immediately hired them back as consultants or to do special projects and still stay involved with the company in a way that suited both of their needs. A lot of times people that retire, they don't know what they're going to do next. And at the same time, when they retire, they're taking a lot of tribal knowledge with them. Well, this company is very well known for inviting those people back to do special projects pretty much for as long as they want to be back. And the company always has needs because they're always evolving. And I really found that to be kind of pleasing and fascinating that they still do that in an era of, well, there's always an era of cost cutting. It seems like every industry and every company is constantly looking at how to be more efficient, but they err on the side of being more employee friendly and more just people friendly. And if you've given anything to the industry and to the company, I should say, at all, they're very good about honoring that by allowing you to continue to be involved with a company in your whatever capacity that you had and in whatever capacity that makes sense, obviously, for the company. And I don't know too many companies that do that, that nurture the people for as long as they want to stay. And they've got a lot of very long-term employees, but also to keep them connected to the company after their retirement date. So that was kind of it was kind of fun to see that, and like I said, very pleasing to see the company do that, but also to observe what has that done for the company. And it seems to have served them extremely well, because the ups and downs in the industry and in the U.S. economy, or the world economy for that matter, this company has not only remained on top, but they really thrived through all the ups and downs over the last 25 years. When I left this company in 1997, they were one of 5 major players in their sectors, and they were around the middle of the pack in the 5. So about 3, third largest from a revenue standpoint in that industry. Over the next about 10 years, each of those other 4 competitors stumbled in one way or another. And our company ended up buying the assets of each of those companies as they stumbled. And now they are the only major manufacturer in that sector remaining standing. Now, the sectors have splintered off here and there and have, changed their structure, if you will. In other words, instead of being just a manufacturer of 2 or 3 different product lines, they've splintered off a little bit. But by and large, this company is still, or is, the major supplier in their sectors. And along the way, what I learned from my friend is that they constantly are acquiring more small companies who have the expertise in product lines or subcategories of the auto parts, specifically, and anything that's electronic. And of course, everything in a car is electronic these days, and has been for a couple of decades. But they've continually acquired companies all over the world that are prime manufacturers in those product lines. And it's just made them a stronger company. It's allowed them to move into the right position for any sector where they were maybe a little bit behind. So there may have been some sector where they weren't doing a good job or very efficient at one small sector of component parts, of electronic components parts. And there's lots of them on cars, like I said. And so they would just research and to figure out who the best was. And many times, they would be buying, they would be a customer of a prime manufacturer, buying a fair amount from them and get to know them from that angle and end up acquiring the company. And also, when they do acquire the companies, I learned that they would oftentimes, most of the time, leave the local management in place to run the companies because they'd been doing a good job, and then they would just supply them with the capital and the oversight and the leadership that they needed to continue to do a good job, or is even a more efficient job. So their growth strategy over the years, like I said, has been largely acquisition. And now they have manufacturing in a number of countries. As a matter of fact, I don't believe my friend could even tell me what the number was, but but they have a lot of manufacturing in Mexico, Hungary, Poland, a little bit in China, but not a lot in China. And so it was interesting to see the business from that aspect, how it has grown. There was a couple of major sectors where they were never number one when I was working with them. And the guys that were continually beating them in the marketplace have now been acquisition targets, and said they've successfully acquired several of those companies as well. And of course, they just get larger and larger, but they still have the same management and leadership vision that they're always about the people. And if they acquire a company that's got good leadership and good management, they certainly would allow them to stay in place. I should say also that even though this is a public company, they are in the fifth generation of family control. They're public, but the family, the employee ownership via an ESOP still has, I believe, more than 51% control. And so even though they have the benefit of public money, they're locally, or I should say family controlled over the last 102, 103 years. And it's served them well. And their profitability has really skyrocketed since I left, because when I left, it was in a time where the profitability was okay, but it wasn't stellar. And so now they're an extremely profitable company. And I think it speaks volumes to the leadership. And at that time, I was not sure that the next couple of generations would actually serve the company well, but it appears that they have. And in some cases, they have family members in the leadership that aren't a good fit for certain portions of it, and they will readily or have readily brought in outsiders to fit those roles. And so they're really cautious about having family members not being just figureheads. If they're not performing in some valuable capacity, then they're not there. Fortunately, they have enough family members to continue on with the company's leadership, and that continues to serve the company well. And since my friend has been there for many decades, he has a good level view of what that looks like from his point of view, and it seems to have served him well. There's also some people that came from the bottom, right where I started, back when I started, that have continued on with the company and grown right up into the top leadership echelons. And it was really fun to see that those people are still not only there, but they are able to thrive and just, grow as far up to the leadership as their capabilities and skill set will allow. So it was kind of fun. It was also fun to go back to the area where I used to live and just kind of take stock of what it looks like compared to where I live now and where I've moved over the years with that company, and then back to California after I left that company, and just kind of take stock in, I know, something about the values that are observed in the people that live there compared to where I live now. And kind of observe what's the difference in the culture, even in the United States, in different areas. And I've lived in about 10 different states, and I've lived on the East Coast, the West Coast, the Midwest, and the South. So I've lived almost everywhere in the United States over the last many, many years. And it's really fun to observe the different cultures and values, types of people who are more friendly, who are more standoffish, or however you want to measure it. But like I said, I just try to be a student of the world that I travel in. And that was really interesting and fun. And hopefully I brought back a little bit of enlightenment from the cultural existence in Minnesota. You've heard the term maybe Minnesota nice along the way. Well, it's true. People are extremely nice there, very friendly, very helpful, and that's a nice thing to be part of and observe. People are very friendly in California, but it's just a different world here than it was there or on the East Coast. The East Coast is a whole different animal as well. But anyway, the bottom line is it's fun to reminisce. It's great to recharge my battery with old friends and spend some time in a culture that I appreciate. There's a little bit that I miss about it. I wouldn't trade what I have and where I live now in California for any of it, but it's really nice to have been a part of that. And I think it's a part of me and has always been. All the places I've lived have become a part of my personality and my existence as well. So anyway, hopefully there's some little learning in here for you today from this little episode of my reminiscence and vacation that will help you in your day-to-day life. And if you haven't taken a break or a vacation or visited old friends recently, excuse me, I encourage you to do so more often than not, because every time I do take a break, I realize it's not enough of a break, or they're not frequent enough, and it would be very valuable for me to do that a little more often, so that I'm a little more refreshed for the people and the clients in my life. So thanks for listening to the podcast today. Check us out for more at mercuryleadership.net, and I'll be talking with you soon. Thank you.